Welcome to the show. You can make an incident look fixed in about 24 hours. Send out a reminder, run a toolbox, retrain the poor bugger closest to the bang. Close the action in the system. Everyone goes home feeling wonderfully productive. And the setup for the next incident stays right where it was. That, right there, is the expensive lie. Not that people mean to lie, usually. It's more polite than that. It's the illusion of control. A quick investigation gives the business a nice, warm feeling. We've dealt with it, while preserving the same work design, the same procedural gaps, the same supervision issues, the same messy trade-offs, the same risk controls that were absent, weak, bypassed, or just decorative. Like safety tinsel. Looks lovely. Does bugger all. And I know the script, because I've read it 1,000 times. Operator to be retrained. Team to be reminded. Procedure to be reissued. Beautiful, neat, visible. Easy to explain upward. Easy to dump on the front line. Hardly ever enough. Here's the bit people forget. Incidents are not random little gremlins falling out of the sky. They are signals. They tell you how your system performs under pressure, not how your poster campaign performs. Not how your value statement performs, your system. When work gets busy, awkward, under-resourced, time poor, commercially squeezed, or just plain weird, what happens then? That's what the incident is showing you. If all you do is ask who stuffed up, you'll get a very tidy answer and a very useless one. ICAM was built to drag us past that nonsense. The whole point is to look beyond the active failure at the sharp end and ask what sat behind it. The task conditions, the environment, the failed or missing defenses, and the organizational factors that set the whole thing up like a dodgy backyard rant. The SafetyWise material says it plainly. The job of investigation is to establish facts, identify contributing factors and latent conditions, review the adequacy of controls and procedures, and recommend actions to prevent recurrence. Not blame, not theatre, not a witch hunt with high vis on. I remember years ago, before half the safety world discovered systems thinking and slapped it on a slide deck, seeing a report after a plant event where the finding was basically, worker failed to follow procedure. That was it. End of story. Except it wasn't. The procedure was hard to access, out of date, written like it hated the user, supervision was thin, the job had changed, and everyone knew the real work was not the same as the official work. But the report landed on the worker because that was convenient. Cheap in the short term, bloody expensive later. That's the contrast I want you to hang on to. Surface-level fixes are visible. System fixes are effective. Those are not the same thing. Retraining might have a place. Sometimes it does. But if the work is badly designed, if the controls are weak, if the risk assessment is stale, if the goals are incompatible, if the organization passively tolerates drift, then more training is just putting deodorant on a drainage problem. Now, if you're thinking, all right, Cam, that's your opinion. Fair cop. So let's go to the evidence. A review of 144 ICAM investigations looked at 3,352 pieces of causal evidence. That's not one war story from a cranky investigator in steel caps. That's a proper body of organizational evidence. And what kept turning up? Systemic factors. Again and again and again. Not just one lonely mistake. Not one cowboy. Not one bad apple falling dramatically from the safety tree. Systemic stuff. Organizational factors. Defenses missing. Conditions shaping behavior. Work arranged in ways that made error more likely and recovery harder. And here's the kicker. Training showed up in more than half of those investigations. More than half. But this is where people go wrong. Training was usually not the root cause in the lazy sense people want it to be. It was a symptom of a broader mismatch between the work and the system. A clue, a signal. Sometimes training was absent. Sometimes ineffective, sometimes not verified. Sometimes the person had been trained, but the task had changed, the environment had shifted, the procedure was rubbish, or the job demanded something the training package never really covered. That's a very different conversation. Training deficiency sounds like the worker needs fixing. Mismatch between work and system sounds like the organization has some homework. And funny enough, businesses prefer the first one, less awkward at executive level, less budget, less redesign, less admission that the normal way of working might be a bit cactus. The course material backs this up too. Safety-wise bangs on, correctly, about PEPO, people, environment, equipment, procedures, organization. Not because it's cute, because if you don't gather broadly, you'll analyze narrowly. And if you analyze narrowly, your findings will be shallow and your recommendations will be recycled rubbish. Have a look at what keeps getting taught in quality investigation practice. Ask who, what, when, where, why, how, and then the magic follow-up. If not, why not? Look beyond human error. Validate facts. Cross-check. Separate contributing from non-contributing factors. Build a timeline. Test the pathways. That discipline matters because memory is slippery, hindsight is a pest, and bias loves a rushed investigation. And while organizations are busy patting themselves on the back for another reminder email, the broader patterns don't exactly scream success, do they? Fatalities still happen, serious injuries still happen, and psychological harm is rising. Different mechanisms sometimes, same lesson underneath. If the system design, workload, support, communication, planning, supervision, and competing goals are off, harm will find a way through. That's why superficial fixes feel comforting but don't travel well. They may tick a local action box. They do not strengthen the business at scale. The article's point is dead right. Shallow findings produce shallow recommendations, and shallow recommendations produce limited organizational learning. You don't get stronger by becoming better at closing actions. You get stronger by becoming better at seeing what the action should have been in the first place. So, when retrain and remind appears, don't stop there. Ask, what about the task design? What about procedure quality and usability? What about supervision? What about risk management? What about incompatible goals? What about the defenses that should have trapped the error or reduced the consequence? If you're not asking those questions, the evidence is already ahead of you. Here's where it gets brutally practical. A bad investigation doesn't just fail once, it costs the business twice. Sometimes 3 times, 4 times, who's counting by then? You pay for the original event, then you pay again when it recurs because the same underlying failure was never properly addressed. Same weakness, new date stamp. Operationally, that means repeat disruption. Same plant down, same process unstable, same people dragged into emergency response, same management meetings with the same furrowed brows pretending this was unforeseeable. Amazing coincidence, really, when the controls were still ordinary and the work was still booby-trapped. Financially, recurrence is a savage little tax on denial. Rework, downtime, damaged kit, contractor time, replacement labour, management bandwidth, external scrutiny, and that's before you get to the soft stuff organizations love to ignore because it doesn't fit nicely in a spreadsheet. The human cost hangs around longer. If exposure persists because the investigation missed the point, workers notice. Of course they notice. They can tell when a report is written to protect the system rather than improve it. Trust starts to erode. People get quieter. Reporting drops. Near misses disappear from view. And that is deadly. Because when near misses stop showing up, some leaders think the place is getting safer. It might actually be getting blinder. The safety-wise governance material makes this point in another way. Reporting levels, feedback quality, and operational learning are signals of system health. Silence after incidents, weak learning, poor follow-through, they all tell a story. Once workers reckon the outcome is predetermined, someone gets blamed, a bit of training gets thrown around, nothing real changes. Why would they keep feeding the machine with good reporting? Why volunteer the next awkward truth? Why speak up about drift, shortcuts, incompatible goals, or the fact the job can't be done as imagined without bending a few rules? They won't, or they'll do it less. And now the organization loses one of the few early warning systems it had. This is why I keep banging the same drum. Investigation is not paperwork. It is design work. ICAM asks the better question. Not who failed, but how did the system allow this event to occur? That shift changes everything. Because once you ask how the system allowed it, you naturally start looking at design, controls, supervision, change, workload, communication, training effectiveness, learning systems, maintenance, contractor management, all the proper grown-up stuff. And from there, prevention gets real. Recommendations stop being little administrative band-aids and start lining up with hierarchy of control thinking. Eliminate where you can. Substitute. Engineer. Isolate. Use administrative controls where they actually help, not because they're cheap and printable. The goal isn't to make the report thicker, it's to make the system harder to fail. SafetyWise says the primary objective is to learn all possible lessons from an incident and strengthen the organization's defenses to avoid future incidents. That's it. Clean. No fluff. Strengthen defenses. Improve the system. Learn the right lesson, not the convenient one. So next time you see a report closed out with operator retrained and everyone nods like the matter's sorted, ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Did we actually fix the system? Or did we just make ourselves feel better before the next person pays for it?